Hello everybody, this is Gavin and welcome to the British Bookworm. So if you're new to my channel, thank you for giving it a go and pressing play or joining and subscribing. Basically the idea of this channel is to follow me reading 1,000 books, so I'll just realign the camera. 1,000 books and reviewing each book with my thoughts and some details about each book and scoring each book from 1 to 5. 5 being a fantastic read, 1 being not so good. So at the moment I'm focusing very much on the topic of climate change. I have a backlog of books I have yet to do a review, and believe it or not, this one is now probably my 6th or 7th try and attempt over the last few months to do this for you. I'm just a normal guy who reads books while I go to work, and it's very time consuming along with trying to go into the gym or keep fit. And I'll be honest with you, at the moment my reading has really slowed down. So this is a book I'm going to review quickly because each other time I've tried to do it, it's taking me over 30 minutes. The Climate Change Hoax Argument by C. Paul Smith, the history and science that exposes a major international deception. C. Paul Smith is a Maryland attorney and author. He was an elected official in Frederick, Maryland from 2006 to 2014. Paul has authored the following books: The State of the Constitution 2017, The Fetal Right to Life Argument 1977 and 2020, I think those are the prints, and The Capitalism Argument 2019. So very quickly, it's going to get a 4 out of 5. It's an extremely interesting book. It's about a 5 to 7 hour read, so it's a fairly quick read. I have read it the second time a few months ago and I couldn't get my review right, so I've just kept redoing these videos. Bit of a self-critic, so I'm very critical when I do these videos, and I've just deleted each one. I was going to do I've done loads of attempts. So let's get going on this really quickly. The introduction. Roll the clips. You know how it is. The world is getting too hot and the humans... Start again. You know how it is. The world is getting too hot and humans... See how hard these videos are? This is what I mean. Like, just going to keep this one on. You know how it is. The world is getting too hot and the humans are causing it. We are destroying the planet. Burning fossil fuels is causing a lot of CO2 that is warming the earth and causing the seas to rise, which will destroy many lands and cities. Human-caused CO2 emissions are causing extreme weather events which are killing many people and damaging a lot of property. These extreme events include more tornadoes, hurricanes, droughts, floods and wildfires. Humans are also causing the polar bears to become extinct. The question is, as I've said now 10 times in my 10 attempts to do this video, do you believe that? If you do believe that, why do you believe that? Where are you accessing the information that's making you believe that? Or is it that it's been a trickle effect over years and years and years that's built that image into your mind? Because I'm pretty sure it's that one rather than you've read it all in one paragraph somewhere. Trickle, trickle, trickle. News clip after news clip, movie after movie. You start to develop that opinion on the topic and finally think it is your summarization of a topic, and that you somehow have done loads of research in it on a subconscious level as if you actually know that what I've just said is a fact. My point of view is that to come to this topic, there are four ways of coming to this topic. There's the first one, which is a narrative of extremism, really, cult-like followers of Extinction Rebellion, Stop Oil, and in Britain. What's the other one? Why has the other one just left my mind? The Extinction Rebellion, Stop Oil, Insulate Britain. Those three are the ones that we have in the UK, and Roger Hallam is, to be honest, is a crank. He's just absolute. I've listened to his videos for hours and hours and hours, and to my own suffering, to do research on books and to do research on climate change and to do research on all the different views of the topic, and it's extremely irritating listening to him and his extreme views, and he's actually quite a evil person in my opinion, because he wants children to be frightened. He wants your children to be frightened. When you listen to him and in his conversations with his crew of Extinction Rebellion, but not only that, in his interviews, I've got loads of clips
with teenagers. Teenagers are shitting themselves about what's happening for the future. They've got another 50, 60, 70 years to live on this planet. By that time, there could be only 1 billion people left.
Yeah. But I don't like the guy. And then there's a second one where there are scientists who Roger Hallam doesn't go off the IPCC reports, to be clear. So the second way of approaching this is those who follow the IPCC kind of reports, where it's like, we need to do something about this. There's a potential crisis coming around the corner. And I'd say the IPCC is a lot more modest than people think, because the mainstream media portrays all the alarm because that's what sells news, whereas the serious scientists and serious investigators of the topic that read or somewhat follow the IPCC, like rather than deeply following the IPCC reports, to sort of delve a little bit into it, like the summary of policymakers of the IPCC reports will say, well, there is something happening, we have a crisis, and we need to take some action quite urgently. So you've got the doomsday merchant, is that like Roger Hallam's quote, we're all fucked anyway. And then you've got the sort of second opinion, there is a crisis, we need to take some fairly strong action, but because they follow the IPCC science, they may have different views depending on how much they've delved into it. Then you've got scientists who read the literature, or people who read the literature, believe that CO2 does have some impact on the environment, not on the environment, sorry, but on the heat, the overall global mean temperature, but it's nowhere near as dramatic or nowhere near as alarming as it is presented in corporate media and like what we call the normal chatter, the normal world that just is portrayed as normal, and it's not normal. So you've got that view, and then you've got the fourth view, which is just it's all a load of crap. So there's 4 views to this topic. This book goes into a massive amount of information in this book, and it quotes some very respected scientists in the field of the issue of climate change. I'm going to start calling it global warming, because that's what they called it originally. And I think for those of us who are out there, obviously my channel is not even like significant in any shape or form now, but if it ever is, I'm going to say to everybody that's watching it, say it's global warming, because that's what they called it when they originally came up with all the theses behind the topic. And climate change is without doubt a move to make it so that everything's all involved in climate change. Climate changes anyway. So when you say climate change, it's basically wrapped up. So they've taken the word climate change and wrapped it up as with their propaganda tools to make everyone believe climate change is a topic of anthropogenic climate change, rather than the world has always had climate change. So I'm going to refer to this topic from now on as a global boiling. Global boiling,
the era of global warming has ended.
Global boiling or global warming.
Has arrived.
So this book basically highlights that there's not a 97% consensus. It talks to some degree in depth of the 97% consensus formulation. I could go into more detail about that because I've listened to some recent videos since I last tried to do a review on this, but I'm not. So I'm going to go just into what's in the book. But there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that there is not a 97 or 99.1% consensus. It goes into some details about where the 97% supposedly came from, and how each attempt to create some kind of formulation of a consensus has been thoroughly debunked. So there's that. And then censorship. I want to talk about censorship. So there's a very fine link, great link between COVID-19 and climate change. And I'm going to stop using climate change and COVID-19 in these videos because YouTube censors all these videos. Everybody that says certain keywords or buzzwords that are questioning the the lies of one side, the power brokers that have all the authority on these topics. They basically have robots on YouTube that listen to certain words and then censor those videos so that they don't go out to the masses. What else? So they censored the Great Barrington Declaration over COVID-19 at the very beginning of COVID-19. The Great Barrington Declaration talked about protecting the most extreme vulnerable of society that COVID-19 was more likely to kill, whereas the rest of the population was actually very, very unlikely to be severely affected by that. People will jump on you and say, well, I heard about a 24-year-old who died, who was fit and healthy. If that is the case, if there ever has been a case like that, they're extremely, extremely rare, like even further extremely rare than anything else on the topic. So you can't use that as an example. And, you know, look, 40,000 people in the UK, I think it is, die every year of road traffic accidents. Does that mean going to ban the car? So we locked down the whole of the economy in the Western world because of COVID-19, which in the end, we had this knowledge at the beginning. So when people tell you that we didn't, it's not correct. We had the knowledge that it was going to kill hospitalized between 0.4% of people that were vaccinated were hospitalized, and 0.8% of people who weren't vaccinated were hospitalized. So that's not even 1% of the population. When you look into the ONS figures in the United Kingdom, it came out that there was only 20,000 deaths directly, something around to 20,000 deaths.
Got a fourth, and this fourth figure is just a little over 17,000 deaths. And I'm doing this as a single video because I'm still processing this information. It's really quite profound.
In 2 years were COVID-19 deaths, and we have about 20 to 40,000 people dying in the United Kingdom every year of flu. So when people said it's barely flu and people attacked that narrative at the beginning, it was actually a true narrative. COVID-19 was very, very, very weak. Even when we had an extreme media campaign of fear mongering on deaths, most of those deaths, if we had, this is the thing about doing these book reviews, you go on tangents, right? In the UK, they said around 170,000 people died of COVID-19, but it was within COVID-19 testing of 28 days, which they had to change later on in the pandemic because people were finding it was brought up that they were putting people that had died of motorbike accidents and, you know, falling down, and they'd already tested of COVID 20 days ago or even 3 months ago, so they put 28-day restriction on it, but that still meant people in mass were dying of other things and getting put down as a COVID death. So in the United Kingdom, what was 170,000 deaths, when somebody looked into a freedom of information request to the ONS, it turned out it was 20,000 deaths died over 2 years. That was directly died, supposedly, of COVID-19. Now, I'm not saying COVID-19, to be clear, didn't kill people and that it wasn't dangerous and that people didn't suffer 100%. But the Great Barrington Declaration was about bringing people by 3 eminent scientists, was about basically not locking down the entire economy, just putting barriers of protection on the most vulnerable and really protecting people who probably would be severely affected by COVID-19, mostly people over 75 or 80, I think it was, or around that age. But Dr. Fauci and his crony censored the Great Barrington Declaration. This is all well established facts now, and every part of the Great Barrington Declaration, which had up to 100,000 signatures that were supposedly doctors and some of the other scientists who had signed it or signed the petition for the Western economy to not close the economy down. And so basically there was a censorship campaign within days of it coming out, and Anthony Fauci had an email basically said we need to repress this immediately and not let it get to the mainstream media so that the world doesn't know about it. So that's what's the kind of censorship we experience when we go against the power brokers of the world. The same thing's happening on the narrative of climate change. then, as he says in this book, he talks about the fact that many scientists can't get work published. There is no funding at all to prove CO2 is maybe, good for the environment.
That since the year 2000, the world has greened by 15% and primarily in semi-arid areas. So let's just walk through that for a second. So 15% is a lot. It's bigger than the entire landmass of the United States.
I would have said it's more like 40% since the 1980s. All right. So, yeah, things are growing
40%.
better on Earth since 1980.
Wow.
Right? Something called the Leaf Area Index has gone up. NASA produces maps that show this. They write press releases that show this, but somehow it's not really present in the media.
Okay, so
And that people who wish to question the narrative can't get money. And the irony of this is, but people will say on the alarmist side, you'll win a Nobel Prize if you win. You'll win a Nobel Prize if you prove there's no crisis or climate emergency. The whole world will give you medals and chuck money at you if you're a scientist that proves that. What a load of hokum. So you've got the Great Barrington Declaration, which is a symptom of our times in this world of censorship, where people are more scared of how they're going to upset other people rather than just speaking in the truth. Look, we say things that we don't mean, and we say things that upset other people, but we just got to roll on back into life and forget about being upset and how we all upset each other all the time. Then we've got scientists of eminent caliber like Judith Curry, eminent scientists of her category, who, to me, Judith Curry is an absolute hero. She should be a treasure in America, a national scientific treasure. And where are all the feminists when you've got a female warrior, scientist warrior like Judith Curry? And make no doubts, make no bones about it. Judith Curry is a female warrior, and she's an eminent scientist. When she believed in the climate change alarm, she trusted her peers, and she was flown around the world in her own testimony, not in this book, but she was flown around the world when she proved that higher level hurricanes were becoming more prominent due to climate change. So category 3 to 5 hurricanes on the scale that they measure for the size of the hurricane, so the higher end hurricanes. She was flown around the world, and people used her scientific reports and data and research to prove climate change was alarming. Then ClimateGate happened. ClimateGate's another topic which I'll find a link for you in here to watch separately to me doing this book review. So ClimateGate happened. ClimateGate showed that there were scientists in the world who were deliberately trying to censor opposition, silence people with different views, and change data. So Judith Curry was furious and very disappointed with her own scientific community when she found out that there were people within the climate change scientific community who were repressing evidence, changing data, trying to silence other voices or critics to their thoughts and opinions on the science, which I don't know about you, but to me, that is totally unscientific. And any scientist who represses other scientists who have voices and just as much right to question or highlight inadequacies in the data, when they are repressed, or people work to such degree as ClimateGate apparently proves, those scientists should be kicked out from the scientific community to never be a mainstream science or in any university or institution again. That's my opinion. I'm very strong-minded about those type of things. 17 minutes in. So then we move on to the hockey stick. That's another issue. But Judith Curry, just jump back. Let's go back 2 seconds. Judith Curry did her own research after ClimateGate. When she questioned the behaviour of the climate scientists from the ClimateGate emails, she was attacked viciously when she'd been an absolute hero to the alarmists. As soon as she started questioning the behaviour rather than the science, she was attacked by those alarmist scientists. Then she started to look at the actual data, and she was disturbed, disappointed, angry, and then she realised she'd been conned and led by groupthink mentality. So she looked further and further into the topic of climate change in areas that weren't specialising just on her field. And because she's got the academic expertise and scientific brains, she looked at the whole spectrum on the scale of climate change. She came to the thesis it wasn't what we're being told. So Judith Curry then had her career taken off her. She had to leave university due to how politicized the whole topic is, and she then lost a really well-paid job. So Judith Curry is a female warrior scientist. Next one, ClimateGate. Now, Michael Mann is like this untouchable scientist, which I find bizarre. To me, from what I've seen and heard, unless these people are totally mistaken or wrong or deceitfully lying to us, Michael Mann should be sacked. He should have no scientific rights to do any kind of scientific research on climate or in any field whatsoever. But in the mainstream is this eminent scientist who's got all these awards. But Michael Mann hid the medieval warming period and other warming periods within the last 10,000 years to form the hockey stick graph. The hockey stick graph looks like a hockey stick. The long handle of the hockey stick was representing tree data rings that supposedly showed rather uneventful temperature, global mean temperature over the course of 1,000, 2,000 year history. Now, this is a big topic in itself, as all these little topics are actually massive topics when you start delving into climate change, which is the problem of this problem trying to do these book reviews really short. But in summary, he hid the 1930s, he hid the medieval warming period, he kind of tried to conceal the Little Ice Age, and then he also tried to divert the fact that the tree rings in the 1960s wasn't going up. He used tree rings before the 1960s, the proxy tree rings, which were based, I think, in Canada, so pine trees in Canada. If in tree rings, the evidence is that if the tree rings are bigger, it's warmer. But the problem with that is they're also bigger if it is the atmosphere is wetter, there is more moisture in the air, and the tree has more water, so the tree rings are bigger, either warmer or when it's wetter. And there's a previous study that was done around the same time by another scientist who had a very leveled out weather proxies, temperature proxies over the same period of time. But the IPCC chose Michael Mann because he had this scoop. And what he did is he used the tree rings. It was more or less flat, like the hockey stick handle. Tree rings. That were the original creators of the peer-reviewed literature said, do not use these for a temperature data source for global mean temperature, or don't use it to try and reference temperature in those areas. He used very limited tree ring data. He took out the ones that are wrong or too jumpy, too divergent. And then when he got to the 60s, because the tree rings didn't carry on, didn't go up, he then chose the temperature, the thermometers that we were using from the 60s upwards to create a scoop, to create a weather scoop like this. Apparently, in the scientific literature and community, you're not meant to use two data sets in the same graph, in the same data point. I think that's correct. So that was Michael Mann and the hockey stick. And then we've got, John Cole from the Weather Channel, the father of the Weather Channel in America, was so sick and tired of all the nonsense about extreme weather, climate change, doomsday scenarios, the claims of the IPCC, that he created a petition called the Oregon Petition, where 31,000 around scientists signed a petition saying that CO2 was good for the atmosphere, that it wasn't dangerous, that it wasn't a pollutant, that it wasn't going to cause unprecedented warming. And 31,000 scientists or people within scientific areas signed this petition. 9,000 of these scientists 9,000 of these scientists had PhDs. Moving on. It says in this book that a 1% change in cloud cover changes global temperature by 1 degree Celsius. On a separate side note, the climate models, where all the future predictions of climate and the possibilities of worst case scenarios and rising seas and increased hurricanes, that they are predicted by the climate models. And the climate models aren't capable of simulating cloud cover. So my question to you watching this, if 1% change of cloud cover, and cloud cover is always changing, so if 1% of cloud cover is changing, changes the global weather up or down by 1 Celsius due to the albedo effect. That's the reflection of sunlight into the radiation or the heat back into space. And the climate models can't even predict cloud activity. But these climate models that can't calculate cloud or simulate clouds, that's 95%. The water vapor and cloud cover is 95% the greenhouse gas that we know, and that's the mainstream scientific literature. The computer models that are predicting the future climate can't actually simulate the clouds. So 95% it can't be simulated, but it can simulate CO2, and that CO2 is going to warm us all and fry us all. Global boiling. Am I like Russell Brand yet? Am I doing it like Russell Brand yet? So that is insane. And the final point on that is not only can these computer models that all predictions, and I mean all the calculations are based on computer models. So all the thesis behind global boiling is on computer models that can't calculate clouds, and clouds can vary, their coverage can vary all the time, and if they vary by 1%, they change global temperature by 1 Celsius or more up and down. And finally, computer models accuracy can be out by over 1 Celsius, up or down. Now, you can't make this shit up. Sorry for my language, but you cannot make this shit up when you look into this topic any more than just listening to tabloids or listening to journalists and anchors on the news read stuff out. You cannot make this up. That should be like blow the whole shebang wide open and make people who just believe it question it. Computer models can be out by 1 or 2 or 3 degrees up and down in their future predictions. Okay, so and they can't predict or simulate cloud cover at all. Listen to any scientist, even the alarmists admit they cannot predict cloud cover or simulate cloud cover in large regions or to a large capacity. It is insane. There was a minority report that was written or compiled by 650 international scientists, all very regarded, well-respected, well-established scientists, who sent this into the IPC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, to say, we don't agree with you guys, you're making mistakes and this and this and this. You never heard about that before. So you've got the Oregon petition, 31,000 people who have degrees and PhDs in science fields. You've got 650 international scientists who sent out the minority report to the IPCC. I can't remember the year. And you've had another one called the Clintel report, which I've read. I've actually read a lot. Currently rereading it again. And then this book, go back to this book, states they use the unprecedented all the time. It's unprecedented. But not only did you have to remember in this video the 1% thing about 1% change in cloud cover varying global temperature by 1 degree Celsius up or down. Climate computer models can't predict cloud cover changes or variabilities. They can't simulate clouds. That's completely well established. And not only that, they are out by 1 to 2 or 3 or even more, some people say, degrees up or down in error. Just think about what I'm saying. And yet they predict we're going to have 4 Celsius of warming based on how we know CO2 traps the sun or heat on the heat radiation in the Earth's atmosphere. So Americans are being told, and I think Biden now a long time, I think it's this year, 2023, has basically pushed the Green New Deal into place. The Green New Deal was like 900 trillion or something. Now, it's going to cost the Americans 90 trillion to implement the Green New Deal or change transport system, energy system, housing stock or housing insulation, heating, water, pumps, you name it. That's going to cost the Americans 91 trillion at the top end, which I think will be well underestimated for the Americans. That 90 trillion is going to reduce, according to the own mathematics of the IPCC and how they formulate their own figures, that's going to reduce global temperature by 0.1 Celsius. So Americans are going to spend £600,000 per household to reduce 0.1 Celsius over the next 80 years. What else have I got for you? 30 minutes. Final point. I did this in a slide on Tom Nelson's channel, but the Earth stopped warming in 1998 to around 2016, I think. Now, what I find even more funny is, and I don't know why the voices on channels about these topics on YouTube aren't talking about it. According to other people, now we've been in an 8-year pause in climate warming now. So from 1998 to around 2016 or whatever, it was an 18-year period basically. For 18 years, we had no warming. And then we've had another 9 years or 8 years from today back where we've had no warming. So where is the warming? That's from the actual data, guys. I'm not making this up. And that was when the CO2 emissions had been quadrupled. I listened to a podcast today, and I think it said that from the 1980s or 1990s to 2023, we've emitted more fossil fuels, CO2 emissions, into the atmosphere than the whole of the rest of the time of the industrialization. So where was the warming? If there's a direct correlation with CO2 in the atmosphere and the global temperature warming, where's the warming been? And this is something that all sides have admitted to. There has been an 18, or as I just said to you, I don't know why they're not adding the last 9 years onto that 18 years. They don't seem to. I think there were a couple of years in between where there might have been some sign of a warming temperature. I think that's why. So anyway, to sum up, this book's a good book. It's got a lot of data on it. I have missed a lot out for you. The IPCC worst case predictions is 2 Celsius, which is a 0.02 Celsius increase every year for the next 80 years, I think it is. When you look into this topic, you have to understand that you have to look into it to a great deal to learn about it, because there's so much misinformation, and any of this could be misinformation. I'm only reporting what's in this book. I'm going to give this book a good 4 out of 5. It's got some very eminent scientists who discussed it in it. There's so much about this topic that I can just not do a video short, and I wanted to only do a 10-minute video, and now I'm 32 minutes in. But you've got to look into this topic, people, because this is going to impact you and is impacting you now. Your energy bills and everything to do with your current life. The things that you don't think are being impacted are being impacted. If you were to find out the kind of things this is doing to the world and to your personal life, I think you'd be quite shocked when you start looking into it. Now, the book sounds like it's saying climate change is a hoax. It means more the idea that we're going to all die or there's some kind of extreme scenario in the future. I'm going to cover that in another book review because that's a load of shit. And I just personally cannot believe the misinformation that's out there on this topic. I really can't. The very fact that computer models can't even simulate clouds, and cloud covers 95% of the greenhouse gas effect to the atmosphere. Just think about what I'm saying to you. I don't know whether it's like, am I misunderstanding things, or are you? Or do we not understand how significant the computer models that the scientific community and politicians are using to govern future green policy and the massive, massive infrastructure changes that some people are trying to push forcefully upon us all, the computer models that they use cannot predict the clouds in the sky and the water in the atmosphere. That's 90 to 95% the greenhouse gas effect. But they can predict something that's 0.04%, which man's emissions is 3 to 5% of that 0.04%, but they can't predict the climate, the clouds, which is 95%. So the clouds vary, but they're trying to argue, I guess, that we can the linear curve of CO2 input into the atmosphere, the emissions, they can predict that with the curve, the graph. I've just forgot the name of it. But the clouds, they can't. There's a large potential error, but I just can't compute that. How does that make any sense to you? How does that make any sense? Anyway, I highly recommend this book because it's a quick read. The author's a lawyer or attorney, but he's done a lot of research, and I think he's done a fantastic job. I'm going to finish this video because it's going on. If you like this video, give me a like, please, and subscribe to my channel. Please understand that I'm a complete novice doing these videos, and I'm trying to get better at doing them. And this is like my 7th attempt on this book, so give me a break. Give me a like, and actually support me as I'm trying to articulate the education I'm getting from books. And yet, it's not all going to be about climate change. I'm going to try and do my other passions. But because I really want to get to grips on this topic, I've got another 90 climate books to come. So if you're into climate topics, then this is where to be at the minute. See you later, everybody.